Welcome everyone to the very first Global Passive House Happy Hour of 2021. Thanks for joining us. We are absolutely an inclusive gathering, and we're welcoming folks from homeowners to engineers, architects to developers, students to retirees, and all of those who are curious and learning, or those who are expert and learning about building science, passive house, zero energy, zero carbon electrification, underwriting, and retrofitting our built environment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Whatever your interest, whether it's residential, commercial, institutional, you are welcome and in good company here. I'm Prudence Ferreira. I am a new senior member of the Carbon Neutral Design Group at BR+A Consulting Engineers. I'm now in Boston. And for those of you who may be new to the group, I've been doing passive house consulting for over a decade and focused primarily on large scale buildings and next generation design workflows. And in a world full of nonsense and disinformation, not everywhere, but I'm feeling it tonight, I'm relieved and grateful to spend each Wednesday night with all of you to focus on the fun, fast, and factual information of high performance projects from all over the world. My co-host, Monty Paulson, is taking some time off and will be back with us in a few weeks, but if you scan the audience, he might just pop up. I'd like to invite you all now to unmute yourselves and raise a glass, raise your voice, and let's have a toast to hope. It is the new year and we are still here.
Well done.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
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 Yes. All right. So go ahead and mute yourself and get cozy in your seat because tonight we have a great show for you. Although usually we don't feature our hosts or the Passive House Accelerator staff, we have a really special treat tonight, and we will be hearing from Passive House Accelerator's founder, Michael Ingui, along with his merry band of revolutionaries, changing the way we analyze, design, and retrofit masonry row homes and brownstones, so that families can enjoy them for another 100 years. But first, over to Zach Semke to introduce our video for the evening.
Great, thank you, Prudence. So today's video is going to be a little bit of a departure. I was thinking of something that'd be good for all of us to watch and absorb tonight on all nights. And this is actually a teaser of next week's happy hour presentation about this amazing project, the Solo project. Killian Collins of Perkins and Will be presenting about it. But it also is a moment of Passive House Zen. So enjoy 3.5 minutes of Solo.
Unmute myself of Solo.
Solo was born out of a deeper understanding of the impact buildings have on emissions, climate change, and health and well-being. This project afforded ourselves and the broader project team an opportunity to test ways and means to achieve net zero, both in embodied and operational emissions. Our president, Bruce Lander, has coined the name Solo as a nod to its isolated location in the lower Sioux Valley, but also as a reference to its zero emissions profile and the fact that it stands alone as a one-off example as a future way to build. Solo represents a new way forward for Delta land development and is a catalyst to help accelerate change in the broader development and building industry.
Delta was looking for an architect that shared their alignment of values, and that's what led them to reach out to us. Our studio, Perkins and Will, are really known for our reputation in environmental stewardship. We We started our work with Delta by creating an overarching set of principles and goals that would lead every decision made on the project. Delta wanted to test out not just the mass timber construction methods that had been proposed for Canada's Firth Tower, but also the broader set of principles and goals around holistic design. This includes everything from eliminating harmful materials used both in construction and finishes, minimizing our energy consumption through high-performance appliances and fixtures, while also generating energy on site, and reducing emissions. The building structure is beyond carbon neutral, and the building does not rely on combustion for operations. Solo is a proof of concept. It proves that buildings can counteract their negative consequences and act as a source of repair. Delta wanted an open layout, something that would serve both as a single-family home, but also be able to host large groups for events, gatherings, and educational purposes. Beyond just a house, Delta really wanted to make a statement. They wanted something with wow factor, something that would celebrate the natural beauty of the site and prove that building sustainably and to the Passive House standard doesn't mean sacrificing design aesthetics or beauty. Of the site drove.
So we're going to go into small groups now. So let me set that up for everybody. And then we're going to do 5 minutes, which everybody knows goes by pretty fast. So this is a chance for you to, multitasking here, a chance to introduce each other in rapid fire fashion and greet one another, and we'll continue to build community, which I think is going to be a really important thing for all of us moving forward and kick off 2021 together. And okay, so every week we on the Passive House Accelerator website, we publish a week in preview article. And so to show what's coming up in the Passive House world, with admittedly a little bit of a focus on our own programming. So we just did this great Construction Tech Tuesday yesterday. Michael Ingui is going to speak with others today. The episode 20 of the Passive House podcast is out, and it's a great interview between Matthew Cutler-Welsh, who's the co-host of the podcast, and Daniel Kress, who's based in Australia and runs the Smart Plus Academy, and he has trained over half of Australia's certified Passive House professionals. Really insightful like tips on communicating about Passive House there. Great Passive House and building science gatherings coming up this week.
Zach?
Yeah.
The whole background as you fade comes up blurry. Just sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. Okay, so and then we have this Mark Willie, thank you for shutting that out, and this I will then focus on your event on Friday with Christy May, a step code Go Beyond from BC to you. So you check that out. There are links on all of these, and then we've got a bunch of trainings coming up. Luis mentioned some stuff from Passive House Canada, and Building Energy Exchanges has stuff. FIAS. So please check it out. All right. So with that, I am going to hand it off to Prudence to make an introduction.
Thanks, Zach. Okay. So although Michael Ingui needs no introduction, there's actually a lot to say about him. He's a partner at Baxt Ingui Architects, and they've got extensive experience in residential, institutional, and commercial projects. And the firm has received a bunch of awards, and they've been in numerous publications, including the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and most recently CNN. And I'll never forget, the first time I ever saw Michael, I was traveling, I was in some airport, running around the country, teaching Passive House consultant training. And I was sitting in the airport, and suddenly, like on 5 TVs, there was this guy talking about Passive House on CNN. And I'm like, if I've been transported, am I in the Twilight Zone? Like, since when is Passive House on CNN? And I wrote down his name, and that was my introduction to Michael. As a leader in the Passive House movement, almost all of the architects at the firm are certified Passive House designers. And because they were so early to the movement, they know all the hurdles, they know all the sticky spots. And that's actually led to discovering opportunities for advocacy. And so Michael's had the opportunity to work with officials and building professionals in New York City and other cities, one of whom we're going to hear from at the end of Michael's presentation tonight. The cool thing about Michael and his firm is that they really believe in sharing, and that's the spirit on which the accelerator is founded. But he really brings it to his projects, and so he will bring competing contractors and even his own competition to his projects to learn, including student groups, tradespeople, homeowners, anyone who wants to learn. And so in June of 2019, he sort of formalized what he had already started doing and launched the accelerator, which is why we're all here today. So thank you, Michael, for that. In addition to everything that Michael is doing for Passive House, he's also an active artist. He draws and paints in multiple mediums, including enamel, ink, oils, and he actually has a permanent glass installation that can be viewed at the 105th Street subway station on the L line in Brooklyn. So if you're in town, check it out. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Michael.
Thanks. That was great. Let me share screen if I can. Let me share the right screen as well. You guys will tell me if I'm screwing up here. All right, view full screen mode. So am I doing it right? Can everybody see it?
Looks good.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. All right, so thank you, Prudence, that really was great. And I appreciate it, a little embarrassing, but great. So I'll start off by talking a little bit about Ben Baxt, who's here, which is great. I've been lucky enough to be Ben's partner for a couple of years, and I've been working a couple of years, and Ben's been working for a couple of years, almost over 40 years. And I've been in a firm where the words reuse, recycle, conserve, adaptation have been bantered around all over the place by Ben, Bob Elanius, who's on, where collaboration is very high in what you have to look at, and it's right up there with high level of design and really doing the right thing. And I've been lucky enough to also work with a whole bunch of great people in the office who have come in and have kind of taken all this to the next level. And a lot of them got certified, and the conversations that happen about what you can do better here, what you can do better there, it's been a really, really great place. And that's kind of gone through to our contractors and kind of extended through to kind of the outside world. And that's why Passive House fits so well. It's not just that it kind of fit with the way our firm thinks and so forth about kind of energy efficiency and reusing and adaptive reuse, but it's also the collaborative and community nature that I saw at all the conferences. It just fit really, really well. So so what do? We do a whole bunch of different types of houses. We've done, I guess, about 8 Passive Houses now certified. We're working on 14 of them now. One of them, Amy, who I think is on as well, is working on. It's a NYSERDA Buildings of Excellence project. It's a cool house, it's a firehouse that we're converting into residential with a community facility below. We're working on a carriage house in Brooklyn with Mark. We're working on a ranch house out in Long Island, which is going to be a retrofit of a stick frame, which is our first, which is kind of fun. I like that our first Passive House outside of the city it will be stick built. And then we're working on the Highland Passive House with Kathy Hobbs, and that's kind of fun because it's upstate and it's a prefab multi-use building, and Chris Corson is going to be providing the panels from EcoCore. So we do a bunch of different projects. We do a lot of historic masonry retrofits, and that's what we're talking about today. That's why this house is up. And we love the houses, and very often people are coming to us just wanting a really great house that will last generations. And they don't know to ask for Passive House. They just know that they want a really great house. And so when we describe the attributes, is why we do it. they're in. They want those things because they want these houses to last for generations. This particular client came to us wanting a passive house, which makes this presentation that much more fun. And Kevin, who did this initial blower door, would have needed 2 blower doors just to get this house up to speed in terms of being airtight. So again, these are beautiful houses, lots of history, but what are we looking at? What does a leaky house mean? Because I always feel like we talk about it, but what does it really mean? And everybody thinks about the fact that you've got leaky air coming in and out of windows, conditioned air out, bad air in. But you also, especially in townhouses, but even in a 2-story house, or definitely a 3-story house, you've got the stack effect. But it's naturally bringing in bad air or air from the outside. It's not really bad from the outside, but it's going through all these cracks that you'd never put your finger near, that that all these crevices that are leaky, that bugs crawl through. You're getting your fresh air from places you weren't expecting. And that's only exasperated with these exhaust vents. And some of the houses that we've been doing, you've got these monster hoods that are getting all this air out of the house. Well, that fresh air has got to come from somewhere. And you have to ask yourself where. And then this is a beautiful house that we've worked on. You've got some really great things here. People want to live in this house where it's got this gorgeous exterior, but on the interior, it's just not that much fun to live in. It has that like old house smell, which is not healthy, and it's not a good smell. And you can see just in this, you can see you've got the shutter that's been warped for years because of water infiltration. You can see all the water damage from the radiator. I'm pointing like you can see it, but I'll do it with my mouse now. So you've got the radiator pipe that's broken plaster at the top. You can see this really well yellowed foam at the bottom, and it's leaking air. So you've got pipes held up by columns of CMU, pipes that have all sorts of penetrations from the boiler room. God knows what's making it up into the living space. And then when we take the plaster off of these buildings, and this is the building I'm talking about today, you can start to see we did some joist repair. We'll talk about that in a second. But you start to see things that are just kind of interesting, like, although I'm sure the flue next door is not really leaking that much soot into the space, it's leaking some soot. And you have to kind of ask yourself the question, how much do you really want in your house? And how long has that been happening? And then you can start to see I've got cracks down here as well. This is where we're getting some fresh air as well when you turn that exhaust fan on. There's nothing wrong with this. It's structurally sound, but you've got cracks in all of these joists. And we have a responsibility. And it's one of the things that Ben has kind of really emphasized in the office. I mean, for years and years, and Passive House fits it well. We have a responsibility to fix this stuff. We're going to be the last ones touching this if we do our job well for 100 years. And how do you increase that shelf life? Same wall with the plaster recently removed. You've got air coming through all these cracks. I mean, all these cracks. So it really provides an issue. It provides a health issue. So why are my windows drafty? We're always asked this question. It's because behind that panel, I've got that brick. And you can see we started to repair this, but these bricks are coming out by hand. The air is just coming right through. It's not better on the side of the window, and it's not better at the top of the window where I even have a cracked lintel. This is pretty typical. Very often the windows themselves aren't great, but it's the area around the window that's also not great. So this talks a little bit about, and I promise everybody I'm going to spend 2 slides on this. I condensed it because I talk about this too much, but it's just talking about Passive House in a different way. It's really talking about it for the health benefits. I don't even like mentioning the word Passive House. It's just not useful. And I've made fun of this quite a bit with Sean and Mark as well. We've got our 5 Passive House principles, but they're not helpful to say. But what is really helpful to say are all of the really great benefits you get from them. So air tightness, you've got sealed from all bugs and dust. I've got my healthy filtered fresh air, windows that create safe environments and that are quiet and don't let the cold in, warm walls and floors. You mention these attributes to a client, they didn't know they could have them, so they don't know how to ask the question. But once you say it, they want it. They want it at any cost. Next question, and Owen, who's also on. EOIN, Owen. Owen didn't do a Passive House before this. I didn't do a Passive House before this. I never heard, well, not this house, but I heard about Passive House for the first time at some point. But Owen built beautiful homes. Owen was a great carpenter. We knew Owen could do it, and we didn't want to find another contractor to do one of the Passive Houses. So Owen's first Passive House just happened to be the first Passive House in a landmark district. And we had a great team. Kevin was on it. Sam McAfee, who's on this, was the Passive House consultant. Bob DeVillio was the mechanical engineer. Amy, who's now a principal, was the architect in this project. And this was a great project for lots of reasons. It was fun. We learned a lot. It's where we started to do our systematic approach to Passive House, where we could really get to do these things right. And it's where we started the first contractor collective, which I've talked about forever. And this was the first project that we did it on. And Owen was the first contractor who let it happen. And ever since then, we've had so many other contractor collectives. There's some familiar young faces here, by the way, with big beards. And we've done some more. This is a Zola contractor collective where we did window installs. This is not a contractor collective. This is just a big open house. And we've done more after that. This is a repeatable approach. These contractors didn't want to come into that collective meeting at the beginning, but at the end, I mean, they love them. They miss them. If we don't hold one in 6 months, they all want to know, when's the next one. This particular one, half of these contractors have done them, but 3 or 4 of them hadn't. And it was really helpful for them. They can see it. And all of a sudden, it's not a scary thing anymore. So Owen was the first one to let that happen. Then we've got this cool certified project he did in Manhattan with us, where we did a lot of restoration of the front facade. Mark from our office was the project manager on this. And then we've got this project with this team. And just to spend a little bit minute while you look at their faces. The interesting part about this project is I got an email last Friday about the fact with John telling us that, hey, congratulations, you guys hit 0.5. You're gonna be a passive plus house, which is great because I think it may be the first one in a landmark district, but that's not what's interesting. What's interesting is we passed that test on Tuesday. And on Monday, they had like a 0.6 something, but Owen's like, no, this is a 0.5 house. So he asked John to come back with the blower door, and apparently there was a door open or something like that, or there was I think a trap open. And again, it was a 0.5 house, but there's no pizza party. I like pizza. There was no beer. I wasn't invited to that. I didn't even know what happened. I didn't know until 4 days later because that was just a Tuesday. That's what Owen does. Now Owen does passive houses. He does them a lot. He doesn't need a lot of hand-holding. We're not really policing him. And so he's gone from a contractor who didn't do a lot of passive houses to right now, 0.5 was just no big deal. Same with Frankie, who ran this one. He's done 2 or 3. Jenny, who's on it. Bob DeVillio. Kevin did the blown in. I mean, this is just what they've done. So you've got a team who hasn't done a lot of them, and now it's just not a big deal. So it really, for me, it really solidifies that question. I used to say, no, you don't need it. And I wasn't 100% sure, but now you can just see the transformation 3 or 4 years, and all of a sudden they're doing passive house, no problem. This is the house, as we look at it, back facade, front facade. Back was already stucco. It's stucco again in the back. Front had gorgeous brick, already had a great cornice. Had to have some restoration work done. But let's start at the bottom. So at the bottom, you've got a new concrete slab that's lowered by about 3 feet. So you can see we've got the bench here. We've got gravel, and we've got 2 layers of insulation, then our Stego wrap, and then our concrete. Now we have gravel, which basically takes the place of both of these and takes the foam out, which is great. But this is a cool thing to talk about, like sequence, and just really taking the sequence to heart. So you see this red line right here, and you can kind of see the detail here where you've got that layer right there. Well, here's that same red line, and you can see how Owen made sure he had that tape mark right, made sure that he could wrap this up. Then you've got your rock wool, you've got your purple board that continues through. We're not quite done with this yet. This is where we're going to do our pizza and beer party to satisfy my needs there. And it'll be a beautiful bar. You won't be able to see anything. There's nothing here that says passive house. Absolutely not one thing. But it's below there. It's under there. And it's going to be a wonderful, warm, dry, comfortable space. So coming through, there's really good lessons we've learned. And again, I have to thank Owen and a whole bunch of other people, Sam and Kramer and John and Ed. We've dealt with a lot of annoying issues, ghosts that you're just finding forever. And one of them is the annoying box beam, where you've got these seams at the top and bottom. And then there's just simple solutions that we can just share, where you've got Owen puts this plywood on the end, he wraps it with the building wrap, the self stick, preps the pocket, and then it really it allows the stow to stick to it well, but also you're not getting that mysterious flow of air coming through here. And it works on the regular joist as well. This actually isn't the box beam. I didn't have a close picture of that, but It really works well. You wrap these, it works well with the stow. You can kind of see they've got the rapid seal there. We've used a bunch of the liquid applied products. Owen really loves the stow. I can say the liquid applied products has made a huge, huge difference to our projects. Coming into that front wall, and just to kind of continue with just thinking about sequencing, putting this strap on and prepping before you do it means that I'm not going to worry about, and this is helping to hold back this front wall in ways where I don't have to take that front wall down, and I can save it there for generations. And then prepping it even more, you can kind of see the stow on top of that, and you can start to see the plywood at the front. Owen really likes to use plywood. We use some of the intelligent membranes on a bunch of our other projects. We don't tell the contractors what to use. They all have their favorites. Owen likes plywood. He can talk to you about why after this. He's going to be on. He's already on. But you can see the nice clean corner, and you can see the amount of time they really spend in the corners. It's belt and suspenders and maybe an extra belt, because they're never going to be able to get into that corner again. Once you start to put this framing in, it's difficult to get to. You could start to see a bunch of other cool things here. Nobody's going to penetrate that air barrier except for Kevin. You can start to see his holes here for his cellulose. You can see the service cavity where that's been created, where you can do both your typical electric, you can do your low voltage. It's a great place to run things, and it really simplifies things quite a bit. Talking a little bit about windows, which you kind of got a picture of there. This is another huge element, and Cory Herrala from Landmarks is going to speak after I'm done. And it's huge. There are hurdles that we can't get past without having partners in crime, like in crime is like a bad word, having partners like Landmarks. New York City Landmarks has been great. Getting these simulated double hungs, this happens to be a Zola simulated double hung, but getting these simulated double hungs approved, we used to have to do it at public hearing. Now we can do it at staff level, and having them really work with us and these European manufacturers to get these rails and stiles small enough and these mullions to work well enough where we can get these approved is the difference between a client saying yes to Passive House and no to Passive House. If I can't get my Passive House windows approved to Landmarks, I'm not doing a Passive House. And it's that snowball effect that just goes backwards. So it's really nice to get these approved, and you can start to see the installation of these. I could spend a lot of time on this. We debate these continuously, but you can start to see the detail where we've got our stud that allows for continuous installation. There are 2 or 3 moments where this is blocked in and you've got the direct connection, but for the most part, it's fully insulated. You can start to see the top. Again, there is a block in the center. You can start to see that window installed. Sometimes we do the shade pocket at the top. Sometimes we don't. You can start to see here's that wall framed. In fact, actually, this picture, and we modify this so much in the debates and the amount of time that the people in our office and the contractor spend kind of working these things out. It's kind of fun, and it's interesting. But now we've moved this stud further in to the space. So as you can see, the plywood could just pass right through this. We're always going to have a situation where our brick's going to be able to sit up against that brick. So we have a little bit of space in here so that plywood can fly right through. So just moving that stud out an inch or two has just kind of made yet one more subtle change to what is a really difficult thermal bridge problem in all of these houses. John is going to talk in the after hours. I think John's presentation is totally worth staying for. But this is how John and Ed from Building Type start to look at things, and they're really helpful. We include them from the beginning. I'll say this a little bit more later, but actually, I'm just going to save it for later. Let's talk about Passive House consultants later. But the one thing I will say here, they de-risk this issue. Having this go through your Passive House planning packages and having this tested and seeing where they think the moisture might go or might not go and how much to insulate and how much not to insulate, it de-risks it for the architect. And we'll talk more about that when they come on. You can start to see the installation of these windows. You can see the finish. You can start to see the tape work over here, which is really nice, clean, and little details that I love, like someone thought to, you can see here's that box beam, but these 2 joists, as well as the front joist, they're all shallower. That's because this front wall is also being tied back. you can see the plywood that's attaching this way. I'm removing that or reducing that thermal bridge. And you can start to see that this thin piece of taped up insulation, you can actually kind of see it on the side as well, where they're trying to reduce that thermal bridge yet again. We've got the rock wool here too, which we use everywhere. I mean, we're using it because it's helpful as, you know, as a house kind of moves in, but it's also just great for sound attenuation. You can see the front joist removed off of that front wall with the rigid insulation, nice and clean. You can start to see the ERV tubes. And again, that corner detail, never going to get to that corner again. So prepping it the first time is really important. And again, any contractor who you're working with, I'll go to the next slide, who can start to really work with you. You can kind of see here in this slide, we're all working out kind of 6 different ways that we want this to attach. And any contractor who has the ability to kind of work out these details and build these sculptural stairs, they could do Passive House no problem. They'll learn Passive House quickly. So, and you can start to see here, you've got that service cavity hitting a side wall. You can start to see they've got plywood attached to the wall and then the stud attached to that, kind of removing that thermal bridge again. You can start to see the penetration for a light fixture outside and this really cool product. I believe this is from 475. Can't remember who sells it or who makes it, but there's a few products out there who do this now. Really nice solutions to what could have been difficult problems. And then kind of working all this out and testing it before the sheetrock goes on is pretty important. The blower door is really quite the important tool on all of our projects. And then getting to the end, which is nice for you guys, sorry, but talking a little bit longer than expected, but we've got our roof. We're up at the roof and we do go to wood joists at the roof where we can, trying to reduce that thermal bridge. We do insulate. This is another great place where it's good to have Passive House consultants. I'm like, yeah, let's do like 50 inches of insulation on the roof. And, you know, John and I are like, no, let's check to see where the dew point is. And, you know, they're putting it through the program. They're telling us where it should be. So we're doing 4 inches on the outside and we're doing the rest inside. And it's just helpful. And again, it's worked out, it's tested, it's in the model. It's de-risking that issue. And very often when we're starting these jobs, the roof is not in great shape. A lot of times they have asbestos on it. You remove that asbestos from the parapet, it's ripping brick off. So having really being able to repair this and then put that rigid insulation on before you get the roof, the clean roof on is really, really helpful. This is a Passive Plus house. It's also an all electric house. These products work really, really well. This is for another presentation as well. But besides the fact that this Fisher-Paykel induction range wasn't out when I did my house, we have all these in our house. We've had them for 4 years. They work out really well. This Whirlpool dryer is yet one more example. We have clients who, if they couldn't get a full-size dryer, they might not do a house that didn't have gas. But this gas, a gas Whirlpool and that heat pump Whirlpool are the same size. Takes a little longer to do the clothes in the Whirlpool, but it's a big difference. You've got the Zender ERV, the Mitsubishi, so it's an all-electric house, which is really, really helpful. Getting that skylight, getting that natural light down. This is a 5 foot by 5 foot Lamelux skylight. This is when the architect is not on site. They're incredibly heavy, but they're single pieces that go down. They're already flashed. They're already worked out. They're really nice skylights. This one happens to be, the shade is on the interior. We've done exterior shades. They get kind of dirty in New York pretty easily. And so you have some serviceability issues, but this is a nice interior shade. You can kind of see there are no lights on when we're doing this. So, and it was kind of cloudy that day. You'll see it in the next photo, and it just lets light in. So again, daylighting, reducing your electrical load. These are things you don't forget about when you're doing the Passive House. They're just, you're building the better box and you're thinking about those items. Passive House skylight hatch, kind of fun, always good to have. And then solar. So you can see it was a cloudy day and it was still sunny inside. These photos were taken at the same time because we haven't had a chance to professionally photograph it. And John, maybe you can talk a little bit about the diagram on the right, but before we get there, this is how we kind of maximize the solar on this roof. Fire department kind of requires a very specific access points around skylights and clear paths, which tells you kind of the maximized amount. In this particular case, we were able to get them nice and low. You can't see them from the street, which is nice. But that is what results in being able to get to a Passive Plus. And maybe you can talk just for a couple of minutes about that, or a minute or so before I introduce Cory from Landmarks.
Sure. Yeah. I just you know, the house is going for Passive House Plus certification, which means that it has very low energy demand, meaning it uses very little energy every year, and it also has some amount of energy production on site. So, in order to meet the Passive House Plus criteria, you kind of see that green line that goes flat and then 45 degrees and then up. We have to sort of get into the left side of that, onto the left side of that green line. And we do that by both reducing the amount of primary energy, and that may be too much to go into right now what primary energy is exactly, but let's just say it's the amount of energy the building uses in the year. And by reducing that and also providing some on-site renewable energy production. And so that's, we make it with this one, despite the rather small solar array. And you know, we can only fit as much solar as we can fit based on code requirements and things like that. But that's in part because we've done such a good job of reducing the energy demand of the house. We've really clamped it down so that we can get into that sweet spot of the Passive House Plus.
Thanks, John. So John's going to talk again in the after hours. It's a good presentation. It starts to talk a little bit about working with Passive House consultants and how we've been working with them and how John likes to work, and it's really, really helpful. But for now, I'd like to also say thank you to the folks in New York City. We've got NYSERDA here in New York State. We've got the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, the DOB, who's been really helpful. And then Landmarks Preservation Commission, and Cory's going to come on next, who's really been, I mean, just incredibly helpful. Again, I cannot tell you enough about the hurdle that would not be able to be overcome if Landmarks wasn't helping us get this through and helping us work out these details of how you could do it. So with that, I will introduce Cory.
Okay, thanks, Mike. And do you still have control of the slides, or?
I do.
Okay, great. I'll just say next slide if that's okay with you when I'm ready.
Done.
But we'll start here. And hey, everybody, thanks for having me. I'm Cory Herrala, and I'm the Director of Preservation at the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission, or LPC for short. And just as a little bit of background, you know, we are the municipal agency responsible for identifying, designating, and ushering the continued protection of the city's landmark properties and historic districts. And you know, that last part, assuring the continued protection, really points towards our regulatory process and our long-term outlook for considering alterations and other work that affects historic buildings. So we believe the challenges that lie ahead, including those attributed to climate change, cannot be ignored. And you know, since the first Passive House type projects were proposed to LPC, and this is going back to I think 2009, 2010 or something like that, the commission, myself included, have always taken a strong interest in the fact that historic buildings can be renovated and retrofit to a very high standard in terms of building energy performance, while also preserving the architectural and historic character that we have a responsibility to protect. So obviously that's really important. You know, in fact, the LPC has a long history of approving proposals for work involving environmental and technological advancements, often finding that these proposals can certainly be appropriate to historic buildings or to otherwise just have no effect on their significant features or overall character. But at the end of the day, you know, we're not building science experts, and that means we rely on you guys to bring us the latest and greatest so that we can collaborate where there is overlap. Next slide, please. So with historic buildings, I think some of you that have worked on these before know much of the work performed for building energy retrofits actually occurs inside the envelope for a variety of reasons. And you know, with that, LPC review anyway is generally not substantive. So there aren't that many places where you know, someone doing a project with the city of New York, designated historic district, may actually have to look at you know, only a few work types in particular that we care most about. But I think, as you all probably know, the high performance windows that are essential for Passive House projects, like Mike mentioned, they didn't qualify for staff level review at all until about 2 years ago. This is after a multi-year period of reviewing them only through our full public hearing process, which can add significant time and risk, I should say, to certain projects. You know, getting authentic looking windows always has been and always will be a big deal to us. But that being said, in late 2018, our landmarks commissioners finally approved a rules package that authorized the staff to approve these windows. And since then, the review process for these projects has been streamlined, and predictability for those pursuing these projects has increased measurably. This is something that we've highlighted in our recently updated permit guidebook, and that's what I'll show you a few excerpts from next. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the commission has approved these simulated double hung windows, and actually it's been dozens of times now over the years. I used to keep a spreadsheet of this, and I got into the 30s and sort of lost track of it, and that has to have been about 5 years ago now. So, I mean, I would venture to say we've approved them well over 50 times, and I'm not exactly sure how much above that, but a lot. And you know, throughout that whole process, from the beginning and even today, our staff has always strived to maintain a high level of consistency in the details, even while reviewing similar models from several different fabricators. And ultimately, we're working together to do some fine tuning. And as a result of that, the details have really progressed over the years to be an even better match to the historic windows than where we started. So you can see a good example of these windows in the guidebook excerpt, as you can see on this slide right now. And the row of windows on the top demonstrates the window in open positions. As you can see, the material configuration and details is a good match to a historic window, even recreating that nice sort of curved head condition on the upper sashes. And really the operation change is only noticeable when, you guessed it, the window is open. And so in this particular example, the window on the top left is tilted slightly inward. I mean, I'd have to say this is kind of our preferred look, as it really doesn't call attention to itself. And I think a lot of times the window is actually used that way, sort of the inward hopper tilt. And then that window on the top right is opened in a casement in swing, which I think generally is more useful for cleaning and things of that nature. But it does, you know, show that the operation change is different in that particular view. But really it is that change in plane of the lower sash that I think you saw in Mike's section drawing that really makes these look like double hung windows when they're closed. And you know, that in large part was the kind of the determining factor in getting these through that whole process of moving it from something our commissioners had to review through that full hearing process to something that the staff could review and approve after seeing these not just proposed but installed, and that they really do look good when they're up on the building. Next slide, please. This is my last slide. I didn't bring many, and I know it's missing context, but really it was just to show you another example of the window itself, which you can see on the sort of the right side with the tilted in window, that middle image. But also, I just, again, to point out that we went to the extent of highlighting this type of work in our newly renovated or newly updated guidebook, because ultimately we really do think it's successful. So, you know, if any of you want to dive deeper, the criteria for approval are explained in that tiny text that I know you can't see on the screen right now. But we are going to make available the links to the website so you can download this chapter or see the whole guidebook if you like, and you can check out the criteria and the examples for yourself. So, you know, hopefully what we have done can be a model for other places trying to figure out how passive house and historic preservation can work together. And on that note, I do want to thank Mike for our collaboration over the years, and of course for asking me to join you tonight. And I'm happy to answer any questions. So thanks.
Thanks. Cheers.
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 Great. Thank you both so much. That was just a fantastic presentation. Historic masonry construction row homes, they're found in many locations and climates around the world. So this information that you guys have put together and the work that you've done is really valuable in preserving our heritage buildings and upgrading them for generations to come. So thank you guys. All right, shall we kick off our question round?
Yeah, sorry, Prudence. I have to admit I was a little bit on vacation, forgot that I had a job to do because I was just captivated by Michael's presentation. So it took me a little bit to get caught up, but there are a few. Again, big thanks to Frankie. I think he answered most of them.
This is Frankie's baby. He knows it.
Yeah, honestly, you can tip that to the question concierge. You know, was fantastic today. There were a couple, and so Harvey, Susan, and Derek, I think yours were answered, and I know Harvey, your question about price, we will come to it, so just hold on. But David Solomon had a question, so we'll start off with David.
Hey, Michael, awesome presentation. Thank you.
Thanks.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Hey, I wanted to ask, have you, first of all, I think the approach to kind of selling the idea of passive house, right, in terms of health and longevity and all that is fantastic. And I think that's probably going to be part of the answer to the question I have, which is, have you had any resistance to switching from gas cooking to electric induction? And just what are those conversations like? Because I mean, I know that, you know, a big answer to that, again, is really about the health of electric as opposed to gas. But I also know that there's still a lot of really kind of entrenched resistance to making that switch. And so what have your experiences been? So
it's a good question. I picked this project carefully. It was an all-electric house, but we actually have a whole other presentation about what some of our other houses look like, from like a house where it's your typical old house with a gas boiler, to a better house that is that has some gas in it still, to what happens when you put a wood burning fireplace in, to what happens when you have a gas range in a passive house, what happens when you have a gas range plus a fireplace in a house. And it's because we've done all of those. For better or worse, we have clients who they want all the passive house stuff, but they're not giving up the gas range. And you can design past it. In fact, PHI has helped us. PHA, who we used for a very long time, helped us heavily on our first. Frank used on this, which is great, and Will and Amy, we worked past a fireplace door that would work with a wood burning fireplace, and keep it outside of the envelope. I will tell you, nobody uses them. I mean, we have one client who I know really uses it, and he opens his window so it's really cold inside, because otherwise it's gonna heat up the house. And he's really happy. I mean, he sent me multiple pictures with the whiskey in the hand and the fire on. But he knows what he has. I mean, he knows he's got to open the window because it's gonna overheat the house. But this resistant, and I guess I would say is especially with the right passive house consultant, and John should talk about this more because they're the ones who do the heavy lifting on it. We have clients who wouldn't give it up, and we've so far been able to design past it. We do everything we can to convince them not to, though. But it's just yet one more hurdle that can be designed through. And I don't know, John, if that would necessarily be your answer to the question.
It would not. No.
Strange. Right?
But I thought we said in 2021 we weren't going to do any more gas. Wasn't that? Didn't we say that?
Let's go.
Yeah. And we have our aspirations in any case. Yeah. I don't think it's a great idea. I don't think we should be doing fireplaces in airtight houses. Certainly not open burn ones. But we have to deliver the project that people are going to pay for. So that's where we are.
What about gas ranges? I feel like wood burning fireplaces or gas fireplaces, they're definitely one thing to talk about. Gas ranges, and honestly, for me, it's the gas. Not many clients. Most of them will do the induction now that Whirlpool's got this big model, but some of them won't give up the gas dryer. So what about?
Yeah,
that?
I mean, I think part of that is just familiarity with the products that are out there in the market, sort of bringing better products to bear, and part of that is just people not having the experience. Like, I cook a lot. I love cooking on induction. I think the only exception is if you do like a lot of like really high BTU like cooking, like if you're a wok cook or something like that, then there might be an argument to be made for a gas burner. But I think
I've seen some induction stoves that have a divot, so for woks.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah, they got these, But yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, I've successfully convinced some clients to not use gas and to go with induction, and others I haven't. Others have stuck with gas. So I'm in the same boat. But
I think taking the exhaust seriously and taking the makeup air seriously, induction or gas, taking the makeup air seriously and taking the exhaust seriously is, I think, other lessons learned in our office.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question in terms of the makeup air component. I mean, typically what we do is we keep any range hoods under 400 CFM, so we don't need makeup air. Do you still recommend makeup air even if you're under 400 CFM, or what's your?
We do. I mean, particularly if you're working with a contractor like Owen, who like makes your houses so airtight. Even 400 CFM is let's see, that's a lot more than our blower door test. And you're going to depressurize the building. And if there's any combustion in the house, that's going to be an issue. So yeah, we do recommend makeup air.
Well, these are all places without combustion that I'm thinking of right now, but
yeah.
You know, and I don't know, I guess our experience is that, you know, it goes to, ERV is out of balance for a little while, but the range hoods are on so infrequently and for such short amount of time that in our experience, it hasn't really mattered. But
I'll use my house as an example. So I'm in a passive house. We barely use our heat in the winter, which is great, but we have an induction cooktop and we've got, ours is not unaware. I can't remember the name of it, but we have one of those monitors, and it spikes every time Diane cooks, and she cooks a lot as well. And she's on, so people can grill her about gas versus induction, because she cooks a lot every day and enjoys it, loves it, and was really nervous about going from gas to induction. But I can tell you that we have the boost. In fact, we put two ERV exhausts in our kitchen to kind of mitigate that. And still it spikes. It goes down 15 minutes later, 20 minutes later, but it spikes when we're cooking. I've got a little picture of me. We're just cooking eggs, nothing else, just eggs, and it's spiking 3 floors up. So I think
that's just from the food and the oil, not
that's induction. We're all electric. So anyway, we could talk about this one for a long time.
Yeah,
let's move on. But it's a good topic. It's important, and that's why we in our office we've kind of created this whole diagram of just like what happens when you do this versus that, versus that, because we've got clients who've done it, so we're able to kind of really just see what that does, which is nice. Yeah. It's an interesting conversation.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, David. And we're going to go to Zach in a second here. Mike, Kevin wanted to let you know that it's a Net Atomo is your indoor quality monitor. So
it is. You're right. Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. He's the one who got it. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah. All right, Zach, over to you.
All right. Thanks. Everybody see this? The list. All right. So you may notice that there are some new names on this list, which we're really excited about, and we'll be sharing more information about this soon. But I want to remind folks that all of the work that we do at the Accelerator is only possible thanks to the support of these fine organizations and companies. So we hope that you will support them in your projects and partner with them. Our founding sponsors are 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingui Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minotaur, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, RDH Building Science, Stocorp, and Zolo Windows. Our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, and our patron sponsors are Inotech Windows and Doors and BR+A. Next week, our Passive House Accelerator Construction Tech, which happens on Tuesdays, Wednesdays if you're in Australia or New Zealand, will feature Adam Romano of Stephen Winter Associates, and he'll be talking about Passive House domestic hot water and getting into the nitty-gritty and the details. So please join us on Tuesday. And then next Wednesday, we'll see more of that beautiful home that we saw at the top of the show, the Solo project, through a presentation by Killian Collins of Perkins and Will. And we're really excited to have Killian on to share with all of us and get into the details of the Solo project. Thank you.
All right. Well, as always, fantastic show. Thanks everyone for your participation and the questions, and for Michael's team for revolutionizing the way that we approach these row homes. This is great. I expect we'll have more to talk about in the after hour. So what do you say? You guys ready to roll into the after hour?